have a panel with us today I'm very excited about, and we have Assemblyman Howard Watts, that is the chair of the Natural Resource Committee in the Nevada Legislature. We have Nevada Division of Water Resources State Engineer Adam Sullivan, and we have Central Nevada Regional Water Authority Executive Director Jeff Fontaine. So basically with this panel, we're going to give each panel member, like we did with the vet panel, they'll have 10 to 15 minutes to discuss what's going on, things they'd like to discuss with this crowd, and then we will go into a Q&A session. And we're going to move on to Jeff Fontaine, and then we're going to take questions and enter into a Q&A session.
Thank you for inviting me to participate on this water panel. And so for the past 5+ years, I have had the privilege of serving as the contract executive director for both the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority as well as the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority. And I just want to give you a quick background on both of those water authorities. So the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority is a water authority established back in 2005, and it has 9 member counties: Churchill, Elko, Esmeralda, Eureka, Humboldt, Lander, Nye, Pershing, and White Pine counties. And we have a 25-member board of directors consisting of really a combination of county commissioners and community members that are appointed by the county commissioners. And it's all about the Central Hydrographic Region, which is the largest of the state's hydrographic regions. It has 78 groundwater basins, mostly groundwater, very little surface water, and alluvial groundwater basins, some deep bedrock aquifers. And if you look at the Central Hydrographic Region, just in terms of its aerial extent, it's about 75% of the state of Nevada. So it's clearly a large part of our state. And the mission of the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority is really to protect the water resources in those member counties. Now, the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority, as the name implies, is all about the Humboldt Basin, and that region it's also a regional government, and that was established back in 1995. And 5 of the same member counties of CNRWA are member counties of the HRBWA, and that's Humboldt, Lander, Eureka, Elko, and Pershing. And HRBWA is governed by a 15-member board of directors consisting of the same group of people, or same types of board members. And similar to CNRWA, the mission of the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority is to ensure the quality and availability of water supplies within the Humboldt region. And, you know, a core value of both CNRWA and HRBWA is protect and enhance existing decreed and certificated water rights. There are a lot of things that both CNRWA and HRBWA do that facilitate the development of a common database and information, monitor and assess and respond to water projects or filings, water rights applications that may adversely impact a member county. So we monitor all those monthly reports and applications, and if necessary, the board will direct me to file a protest if it's felt like that particular application would have an impact on an existing right or a conflict with an existing right in a member county. We lobby on behalf of the member counties, both at the legislature. We get involved in regulatory actions by the Division of Water Resources, NDEP, and even federal agencies such as US EPA and others. And we encourage a lot of participation, citizen participation. Our meetings are open public meetings. They're noticed. Often they're streamed or a video conference like other public meetings are. And we welcome participation and comment at those meetings from the public. And then additionally, for the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority, we've had in place for a number of years a groundwater monitoring program in 12 groundwater basins. I think we monitor 51 wells and collect data that isn't currently being collected by either Division of Water Resources or any of the federal agencies. So that's just a little background on both of those organizations. With regard to the issues, I would say that despite what's happening here today and what's happened here in the last several weeks, drought is still at the top of the list. And even with this huge amount of rainfall that we're seeing, which is really excellent, it's not going to solve the extended drought that we're having. And even if we continue to have the type of precipitation that we've had this week and really this past month, we have to also keep in mind that the management of that water, that precipitation, is going to be different than how it's been managed in the past. And so, for example, in the Humboldt Basin, which relies on snowmelt as a base flow, that's all changed. We know that instead of snowing today in most of the locations, at least here in Western Nevada, it's raining. And that's going to be the case throughout the rest of the state. And so what we saw last year, particularly with the early rains and snow that we had last year and last December, is that we had an earlier snow melt, earlier peak flow, and a smaller peak flow than what you would typically find in the Humboldt River. So there are impacts besides not having enough water. It's how that water actually flows into the system. I would say that a lot of the conversation and discussions that I've been involved with, at least up until now, have all really revolved around the increase in demand for water and the sort of the supply and dwindling supply, and how that's going to be sustained, and particularly as it relates to the overpump basins that we have in this state. I think at last count, and Adam can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but 55 of the 256 groundwater basins in the state are currently being overpumped, and nearly half of the groundwater basins are either fully appropriated or over appropriated. And so that's an issue that is really taking of our interest and focus in trying to solve, first of all, the critical areas, and then figuring out how we can work on sustainability throughout the rest of the state. And both Assemblyman Watts and the state engineer referred to some court decisions that occurred this past year that will likely come up for discussion in this legislative session. They already talked about the Judicial District Court ruling on the lower White River flow system and the impacts that has had on the ability for the state engineer to consider impacts in adjacent basins. And then the other really significant ruling was by the Supreme Court in the case of the Diamond Valley Groundwater Management Plan. That is a really significant decision that going forward is going to be one that, well, we think that we have a clear ruling from the Supreme Court on whether or not a groundwater management plan can deviate from prior appropriation. I'm not sure that that's the end of the question or the end of the story, because there's still a takings issue out there in terms of whether or not that would happen if, in fact, when the Diamond Valley Groundwater Management Plan moves forward, if someone files an argument that some of their water has been lost and therefore it's a taking. So something that I'm sure is going to be discussed as well in the upcoming session. One of the other issues that we've been very much involved with at CNRWA and HRBWA, and I know the state engineer isn't really in a position to advocate for this necessarily at this point, but we all recognize the constraints that the division has with regard to funding, staffing, and really the overall resources in the state engineer's office. And so we're hoping, and we've been working both with legislators and behind the scenes to try to get the state engineer the tools and the resources they need so they can manage the water the way they're supposed to manage it. And it's something that I believe is long overdue, and that also includes updating all the basin inventories. And I know that the Interim Finance Committee that Assemblyman Watts sits on was very helpful in appropriating some money to the division to get that effort started. But that's a long-term project that we think needs to be funded and implemented over a long period of time to get to all those basins, so we know exactly how much water we're talking about and can plan from that going forward. And One other item that we should probably just talk about real quickly, it's not necessarily a legislative matter, but it is a matter that could impact all of you, and that has to do with the Supreme Court's commission studying the adjudication or the handling of water law cases in the state of Nevada. And that commission has been meeting for, gosh, about 2 years now. State engineer is on that. I'm a member of that commission. There are other members from the farm bureaus as well on that commission. And at the last meeting of that commission, which was just a few weeks ago, it was decided that the chair of the committee, the former Chief Justice and Associate Justice, Justice Hardesty, who chaired that committee, was going to file an order, proposed order with the Supreme Court on a 2-year pilot study for how water law cases would be handled in the state of Nevada. And basically what it would do is require any district court judge who would hear in a water law case, whether it be an appeal from a state engineer decision arising out of any of the NRS chapters dealing with water, whether it's pertaining to an adjudication of pre-statutory claims of vested water rights, would have to be heard by a district court judge who has specialized training in water law and water science based on a curriculum that would be established by the administrative office of the courts. There will be a hearing. My understanding is it will be a hearing before the Supreme Court on that proposed order. And if it's approved, then that's how petitions for judicial review of state engineer decisions will be handled going forward. What's important to recognize is that the case would be heard in the county where the case arises, but if the district court judge in that particular county is not trained or was appointed by the Supreme Court and appointed by the Supreme Court to hear water law cases, the Supreme Court would have to appoint a district court judge that was appointed or is a trained district water judge to hear that case in the county. So that's a pretty significant update and change in the way water law cases will be heard, at least for the next couple of years. And going forward, again, my latest count is that there are already 3 bills, water-related bills that are out, and another 18 bill draft requests. We have some information on a lot of those, but not all of them. And we have probably 5, I think, bill draft requests that were initiated by the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority and Humboldt River Basin Water Authority. And we can get into some, discussion about that, during the Q&A, I guess, as well. So I think I'll just wrap it up there, Stacy. Thank you.